Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the life of Steve Jobs. You've given me a ton of material on him, books, articles, the works. So we're going beyond the iPhones and the Macs and all that to try to figure out what made this guy tick.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, that's for sure. And it really does go way beyond just the gadgets and technology. I mean, you're talking about a visionary, a leader who totally reshaped how we interact with technology today. But it's also, a very human story, full of success, failures, contradictions even.
Exactly. So maybe we should just start at the beginning. The stuff you gave me about his childhood, it's not exactly your typical tech genius origin story, right?
You're right, it's not. People always mention that Jobs was adopted, but we don't often think about how that might have, affected him. Imagine being adopted into a working class family, no connection to the tech world or anything like that. But somewhere in that ordinary upbringing, the seeds of something extraordinary were planted.
You're talking about his dad's garage, right? I mean, that seems to come up a lot in what I've been reading.
Yeah, absolutely. His dad, Paul Jobs, was a machinist by trade, and that garage was young Steve's playground. And it wasn't just tinkering around, It was about understanding how things worked, taking them apart, putting them back together. It suggests a real curiosity beyond just a kid messing around with tools.
So even early on, there was this drive to tinker, to explore. But he was also kind of a handful in school, right?
Yeah.
At least that's what I'm gathering from all this.
Oh, yeah, to say the least. I mean, he was brilliant, obviously, but also rebellious, clashed with authority. But here's the thing. His teachers, even when he was pushing their buttons, they saw something in him, some potential. They really pushed him academically, encouraged his parents to get him into advanced classes, that kind of thing, nurturing a mind that could easily, gone unnoticed.
That's really interesting. It makes you wonder, what if those teachers hadn't seen that spark? Would we even have Apple today?
It's a great question, and it makes you realize how important mentors are. Recognizing and encouraging talent, even when it comes in an unexpected package.
Mm.
And speaking of finding those kindred spirits, that leads us to his friendship with, well, the other Steve Wozniak.
Ah, yes, the other Steve. Their partnership has always fascinated me. It seems like every story about Apple's early days mentions this incredible synergy they had.
It was more than friendship, It was like they were technological soulmates. They shared that passion for electronics, this vision of what computers could be. And of course, they had that countercultural spirit that was so typical of the 70s.
And that shared passion is ultimately what leads them to that now legendary garage, right? 1976, the birthplace of Apple Computer Co.
Exactly. It's almost a cliche now, the whole tech startup born in a garage thing. But back then, they weren't thinking about building a billion-dollar company. They were just two guys excited about this technology, wanting to share it.
And their first product, the Apple I, that was really a niche product, right? For hobbyists, tech enthusiasts, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly the sleek, user-friendly Apple product we're used to today. It was the Apple II that really put them on the map. One of the first commercially successful personal computers, made them millions.
Okay, so the Apple II, that was a game changer, a computer for everyone. Was that the first sign of Jobs wanting to bring technology to everyday people?
You could say that, but the thing about Jobs was he was never satisfied, always looking ahead, dreaming bigger. And that drive led him to, well, his next obsession, the Macintosh.
And this wasn't just another computer, was it? This was about changing how we interacted with technology on a fundamental level.
Absolutely. The Macintosh with the graphical interface, the mouse, it was completely different from those clunky text-based systems everyone was used to back then. Jobs was obsessed with making technology intuitive, even elegant. He wanted computers to be for everyone, not just the experts.
He really did have a very specific vision, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. And that actually led to some friction, because the Mac, even with all its innovations, it was facing delays, cost overruns.
The board wasn't happy.
Not happy at all. They saw it as a sign that Jobs' vision, well, maybe it was a little too out there for most people.
So it wasn't just his management style. They really questioned his whole approach.
Exactly. And it all kind of came to a head in 1985 when Jobs was forced out of Apple, the company he founded.
Can you imagine to be pushed out of your own creation like that?
It must have been devastating. But it's interesting. He didn't just disappear.
No, he went on to do a lot, actually.
Right. He took some time, traveled, explored new ideas, even got into Eastern spirituality.
Oh, yeah, there was that trip to India, right? What was that all about?
It seems like it was a time of real reflection for him, a chance to reset and recharge. But it wasn't just a vacation. He was exposed to new ways of thinking, new philosophies.
And that influenced his work.
Definitely. I mean, you can see it in his later designs, this focus on simplicity, on the connection between technology and spirituality. It's like he tapped into a whole new well of inspiration.
And that led him to start NXT.
Yeah, that was his next big thing. He wanted to build high-end computers, but this time it seemed like he was more aware of the business side of things.
He learned from his mistakes.
You could say that. But even with all his talent, and he'd put together an amazing team at NXT, it never quite took off the way Apple had.
So was that a failure?
It's hard to say, really. Commercially, sure, it wasn't the success he'd hoped for, but he learned a lot during that time, honed his skills.
And that experience, it paved the way for his return to Apple.
Exactly. But we can't forget about the other big thing that happened during this period, Pixar.
Oh, right, Pixar. It's easy to forget about that part of his story.
He always had this creative side, this fascination with pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
And he saw the potential of computer animation way back in the early 80s.
So how did he get involved with Pixar?
He bought a small animation division from George Lucas, of all people.
Wow, George Lucas.
Yeah.
Talk about a blast from the past.
Right, and with Jobs at the helm, Pixar was born.
And they completely revolutionized filmmaking.
Toy Story was a game changer. The first fully computer-animated feature film. It was a huge risk, but Jobs believed in it.
And it paid off big time.
Oh yeah, Toy Story was a massive success, both critically and commercially. But more importantly, it proved that computer animation could be just as expressive, just as emotional as traditional animation.
So while all this was happening with Pixar, Apple was struggling.
Yeah, they were in a bad way. Losing money, market share, the whole 9 yards. They desperately needed something to turn things around.
And that something turned out to be Steve Jobs.
Fate works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? In 1996, Apple acquired NXT, primarily for its software.
But it also brought Steve Jobs back into the fold.
It was a gamble for both sides, really. But sometimes you gotta roll the dice.
Talk about a comeback story. It's like something out of Hollywood.
It really is.
Yeah.
He wasn't the same guy who left, He'd learned a lot in those years.
Yeah, he was older, wiser, all that.
Exactly. And he had this renewed focus, this determination to prove everyone wrong.
So what did he do first? Turn the whole company upside down.
Pretty much. He got rid of a bunch of projects, products, anything he didn't think was up to snuff, streamlined the entire operation. Jobs were all about focus.
And that focus led to, well, a whole lot of iconic products.
Yeah, he had this knack for knowing what people wanted before they even knew it themselves.
Like the iMac. I remember that. It was huge.
1998. Bold, colorful, totally different from those boring beige computers everyone else was making.
It was like he was saying, this isn't your father's computer.
Exactly. And it was a hit. People loved it. It was the start of Apple becoming, well, Apple as we know it.
And then, of course, came the iPod.
2001 revolutionized how we listen to music. And again, the design so sleek, so simple.
Everyone had those white earbuds. It was a whole thing.
It was. And then just when everyone thought they knew what Apple was all about,
The iPhone.
2007.
The world would never be the same.
It really did change everything, didn't it? Totally. The iPhone wasn't just a phone. It was a mini computer, a camera, a music player, everything in your pocket.
And the apps. Suddenly, the possibilities were endless.
Jobs understood that. He saw the potential of this technology to change how we lived, how we worked, how we connected with each other.
And then, just to prove he wasn't a one-trick pony, there was the iPad.
2010. People thought it was crazy at first. Who needs a giant iPhone?
Turns out, everyone.
Pretty much. And that's the thing about Jobs. He wasn't afraid to take risks, to push the boundaries of what people thought was possible.
He definitely wasn't afraid of anything.
And he was human, He had his fears.
Right. I mean, the cancer diagnosis, that must have been terrifying.
2004. Pancreatic cancer. Kept it pretty private for a long time.
He kept working, though. Kept leading Apple.
Amazing, isn't it? The strength, the determination. But it took a toll.
In 2011, he stepped down as CEO.
Handed the reins over to Tim Cook.
And later that year, he was gone.
Yeah, too young. But what a legacy.
Absolutely. It's hard to imagine the tech world without him.
He changed everything, and he did it his way.
That's Steve Jobs for you. A true original.
Thanks for having me. It's been great talking about him.
It really has. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Steve Jobs. He was a complex figure, brilliant, flawed, but undeniably fascinating. We hope you enjoyed learning about him as much as we did. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep thinking differently.